You know what I'm saying? Let's clear some air.
Okay, so let's clear the air. So the way that this thing started was, back in, good grief, I think it was in 2023. I had reached out to, it was like August or September 2023. I put out the word on Twitter. I need help. I need help. Like, I'm going to start getting voter rolls. I want to try and, dissect them. I had been to several of Dr. Frank's, Dr. Doug Frank's, presentations, seeing what he was talking about there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think he made some really good points, but I said, I don't think we have the same kind of issues going on here, but I want to try and figure it out. And so I put the word out that I needed people to help me with that. And a bunch of data folks reached out to me, and we put together a group. And one of those people was Kim Brooks, and we got off to a decent start, and we were trying to get these voter rolls. And as we were pulling them in, we started realizing that it was taking up a fair amount of space. It was going to take like some specialized machinery for that. And we were kind of like, we kept hitting roadblocks. Like I could only load so many people into my Excel spreadsheet before it would crash. And I was talking with, I went to a something called the Diners in Sugar Hill, and I had been invited to that, by some folks who said, "Hey, why don't you come over here?" And my friend Maribel Hodges, was one of the people that put that on. And when I went there, I met a gentleman that said, his name's Mark, and Mark said, "Hey, my son is involved in this kind of stuff, and he knows how to handle big data, and he knows how to clean up dirty data." And when we're talking about dirty data, what I'm talking about is like in the voter rolls, you might have somebody's name that, there might have been like an accent over an E, or maybe there was a comma that was in the wrong place. Or if they spelled out Macintosh, it might be MC space INTOSH, for one record. Another one might be MC INTOSH. Anyway, so he said his son had a way to, clean that stuff up and make it so that it was usable. And I said, "Oh, thank you, Lord, for putting somebody in my life that can handle this." So this guy's name is Lane. He gets involved in this, working with the group, and we're starting to hit some decent strides. And then in the first part of 24, I got really actively involved in trying to help write the legislation for election integrity. And so Kim was doing a fantastic job helping drive the group. And so I wanted to make sure that, that she continued to do that. And they had, regular meetings, once a week of what she was looking for. And she did a really good job of coordinating those people and getting them to, what she needed, what she would request information. And these guys would go out and they would find it. And in one case, there was a lady named Stacy Doran who got involved in it too, and she's really fantastic also. So I got really, very actively involved in writing legislation. I had to pull myself back a little bit. The Georgia Nerds continued working, and then after the legislative session was over, we didn't have all the successes that we wanted, and I was looking for an avenue to try and figure out how else can we, promote election security. And that's when I dove into trying to help rewrite some of the rules. And I went to a lot of state election board meetings trying to rewrite the rules. And that took up a huge amount of time, and went, almost through the summer. And the Georgia Nerds are doing a great group, and I would participate, from time to time to listen and see what's going on. And it seemed like they were making some really great headway. And then, as you know, and anybody who has known or seen Kim, she has a fiery personality. And when she would go out and speak, sometimes she would get really fiery and very upset. And what I found out was that there was a little bit of dissension in the ranks about, kind of like toning down the rhetoric and the vitriol a little bit. And what happened was on August the 11th, Sunday night at 4:24. I don't know if you can see this or not. It's not going to show up.
It shows the text. It shows the text, but you can't read it.
Okay. Well, anyway, the text says Lane took down the VPN. That's the virtual private network. yesterday and both servers and won't return a phone call. I left him 2 voicemails asking him to reinstate. He took property that doesn't belong to him. He says he takes direction from you. Okay. Ask him to reinstate immediately. All right. And I responded a minute and a half later, and I said, nobody takes direction from me. I didn't ask him to do anything. He mentioned something about a new data tool that would require a separate website for hosting. I'll talk with him and get it reinstated. And she ended with like a little thumbs up that said, God, this is not working. Anyway, ended with a thumbs up. And then she came back and said, remind him he doesn't have permission whatsoever to share multiple files, intellectual property that he does not own. Thank you. All right, that was on Sunday. On Monday morning at roughly 10:30 in the morning, she said, I've still not heard from Lane and he hasn't returned what he took. VPN and servers are still down. All right, so I'm trying to reach out to Lane and figure out what's going on. Okay. Took a couple days to connect with him. I did finally get connected with him on Tuesday evening, and I was like, dude, what's going on? And he said he was really concerned about the rhetoric and the vitriol that was going on. And he was concerned that if Kim went out and with her fiery personality and incited somebody to some kind of violence, people might point the fingers back to the Georgia Nerds and say, you guys caused this, and she's part of your group and, you guys are all together. And so we're going to sue you. So, the chief data architect, that was his major concern.
Okay.
All right. So during this time that I'm trying to, talk with him and like understand like what's going on. And I'm talking with him and saying, hey, can you get the service reinstated? He's telling me that he's doing an upgrade, on the server. It's down for a couple of days. And this server, it's really interesting. The machine is not something that you can just go down to the computer store and buy. Okay.
Yeah.
Like my machine right now has like, a half a terabyte of RAM to it, which is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And, or no, actually mine does not have a half a terabyte of RAM. Mine has 16 gigabytes of RAM,
Okay.
unless I upgraded to 32. Anyway, his machine that he built, using his money, some money that was donated, money that was given by his parents and whatnot, this thing has 8 terabytes of RAM to be able to handle massive files, because we would have like 100 million lines, or 100 million lines this way and like 45, columns of data would go into it. So anyway, he was telling me that, it's down. As soon as it comes back up, I'll get it reinstated. And while this is all going on, I'm getting telephone calls from a friend of mine, James Abley, who says, David, we just want to get this thing solved. We want to get this thing reinstated for Kim. What if we just buy the system from your guy? And I was like, James, I don't think it's for sale. And I said, the guy that's built it, he's probably got $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 that's involved in it. And James took those numbers as, as like me giving like an offer, to sell it. And then he calls me back the next day, and James is like, we just want to buy it. We've got the money, to buy it. I'm like, James, I never told you it was for sale. Right. And he's like, okay. And then concurrent with that, I'm getting telephone calls from another guy who's saying that he's going to send his head of security over to, he's threatening me by saying he's going to send his head of security over to collect the server, and that his head of security is ex-special forces. And I told this guy, I said, hey, I've got plenty of friends that are ex-special forces too. And if you send your guy over here, I've got cameras everywhere. If he breathes wrong, I will own your business. All right. So, I was getting a lot of, push
Right.
and pressure from everywhere.
Heated discussions, right?
Heated discussion. All right. And then ultimately, we ultimately ended up, getting a fully backed up, copy of all the data that's in there, got it sent over to Kim. She got it, I think pretty promptly. sent it by U.S. Postal Service, return receipt and all that kind of thing, so I could make sure that we got it delivered, and she got it. Right, and around that same time, you know, um, you know, um, around that same time is just like our relationship just completely fell apart. And I think Kim is really brilliant. I think Stacy is really brilliant. There's a lot of people on this team that are really brilliant folks. This did not need to happen. And I think part of it is just, maybe it's passion, maybe it's personality, but I was literally just trying to be the peacemaker to try and figure out how to make this thing work. And then I got thrown under the bus. So there's a bunch of people out there that think that I shut down the nerds. I didn't do anything of the sort,
Okay.
and people were telling, and I had people saying, you know how to turn the server on. I'm like, I don't even know where the server is. I just see the reports that come out of it that y'all are working on. So I had, I had, like I said, I had less involvement than people like to think, but I got thrown under the bus on that deal.
Right. Well, I certainly appreciate you coming on the show to talk about this. I know it's a contentious issue, and it saddens me because I agree with you that there's so many good people that we get caught up in this, and I don't want to say this about this particular story, right? Because I'm not a part of this. I just know that it's something that's been brought up. So many times I see where any person in the grassroots can do, 9 things that are right, and then when that 10th thing they do is wrong, all of a sudden we've got to cut ties, and we have to we got to point fingers and burn bridges, and this has nothing to do with anybody involved. But I've seen this time and time again, and it makes it hard because the grassroots wants to unite, and we want to find people that we want to represent us. We want to find people that could be our next governor, that's got the citizens of the state, their best interest. So I think we all need to do a better job of showing each other grace. And definitely that was something I just from my point of view, I just hope that all parties involved can come to an understanding, because I can't wait to have Kim Brooks back on, whether she goes to War Room or what, and listen to or be able to interview her about the next phase. And fighters like Stacy Dorn are wonderful people. And so, I thank you for sharing that, right? And we'll
my
take.
my my whole involvement, the most important thing I did in that whole thing was putting together the group,
Right.
calling, a call out for volunteers. And when I started my Twitter account a long time ago, I had no followers or anything like that. And the more that I posted about election, issues, the more the following grew. And that's kind of what prompted me, back then to try and use that. And I've used Twitter several times to try and say, hey, I need a team of people to help me with this. And I get some really wonderful people. One of the most fun, I'm going to leave you with like a little fun thing that happened out of this thing. So when Dr. Frank came to my office, he gave a presentation, in a big conference room that we have there. And I had the nerd group was there ahead of time to listen to Dr. Frank and hear what he's finding with his data. And I had to go upstairs and take a call. And all the nerd guys are there. And I said, hey, can I've got to go upstairs to take a call. Can one of you guys take some notes for me? And one of my friends, one of the guys, Jeff, turns around and he said he's laughing, and everybody kind of has a smile on his face or on their face. And I was like, what are y'all laughing about? And he said, David, you just asked a bunch of autistic people to take notes. He said, we'll have your notes.
That is wild, man. All right.
Fun stuff.
So, all right, we've got a lot of comments we're going to go through in a minute, and I've told everybody that, and we've got a bunch of people watching, which is great. So